redo so. The recording and slide presentation will be available on Monday, April 13th. During the presentation, you are encouraged to ask questions. Please use the hand raise icon or place your question in the chat. There will also be time for Q&A at the end. You will be receiving a survey upon completion of this webinar via email, so please take the time to complete and offer feedback. To start us off, I do want to welcome Meg Oganda from Minnesota Retain, and she will share an overview of the program and the impact it has had. So take it away, Meg.
Thank you. I'm going to share my slides here in a minute. Just 1 second. Are you able to see that? Just 1 second here. Having a little problem here. I'm sorry. This is technical difficulties. Okay, got it. Okay. Thank you, Leslie, again for giving us the opportunity to present today. As Leslie has told everyone, my name is Meg Odanga, and I'm the Employer Engagement Specialist with the Retain program. And joining me this morning, John was supposed to be here, but I don't think he has joined the forum. And I also have John is the Grant Specialist Coordinator. I also have Akiatu Pratt, who is Community Engagement Specialist with Minnesota Retain. So today we want to talk about a challenge that affects many Minnesotans, that is job loss due to health conditions. Every year, workers lose their job, not because they lack skills or motivation, but because an illness or injury temporarily disrupts their ability to work. This often results in financial stress, loss of benefits, and difficulty returning to the workforce without early help. Many people permanently leave the workforce even when they could have stayed employed with the right support. So Retain is a free federal funded program that helps workers stay at work or return to work as soon as medically possible after a health condition impacts their job. We partner with workers, employers, and healthcare providers to create a coordinated return to work plan that focuses on early intervention, appropriate accommodation, and medical coordination. So Minnesota Retain has grown significantly since it started. In phase 1, we supported about 150 employees in southeastern Minnesota. Phase 2 expanded statewide with the goal of serving 3,200 workers, including at least 15% of BIPOC participation. The sustainability pilot started in 2024 to 2026. It is expanding enrollment and aligning Retain with state workforce policies. And through the Disability Innovation Fund, we are expanding partnership with healthcare and workforce system through 2029. So Retain is still going to be around until 2029. Here's how the Retain process works. So first, workers can be referred by healthcare providers, their employers, or can do self-refer. They can complete an initial an initial assessment with case manager who review their condition and job duties. And then next, there's a customized return to work plan that is created with input from the worker, the employer, and the medical provider. We offer services such as case management, medical coordination, workplace accommodation, support, and vocational rehab. And throughout the process, we monitor progress and adjust plan to ensure a safe return to work. To qualify, participant must be 18 or older and live and work in Minnesota, be employed at the time of enrollment, and currently unable to work or unable to work even with accommodation. They must also be within 6 months of their last day worked. Employers and healthcare providers play a key role. Employers can refer workers and help implement accommodations. Healthcare providers identify eligible patients and collaborate on return to work plans that align care with job demand. So Minnesota Retain has made a significant impact. I think I talked about this. Okay, over 3,600 workers have enrolled. I said that in the previous slide. We've served participants in 90% of Minnesota counties. Mayo Clinic added employment as social determinant of health in its medical record system because of Retain. The state added Category 8, that is ill or injured individual, to dislocated worker eligibility. More than 1,000 participants have returned to work or started a new job. We've provided over $754,000 US in support service like transportation and housing assistance. We exceed our equity benchmark, which was 24.7% of participants that are BIPOC, surpassing the 15% goal. Retain Help did build a replicable community engagement model, and participant satisfaction remained high at 80 to 90%. And first 476 healthcare providers have completed our CME training on work restriction. Our work has generated 6 peer-reviewed journal publications contributing to national learning. The next slide is just about our resources, the Department of Labor. We have Social Security Administration and Minnesota Retain website. Before we close, we want to acknowledge the partners who make this program possible. We do have DEED, the Minnesota Department of Labor. We have Mayo Clinic, Workforce Development, Inc., and Department of Health. So we have our information there. Thank you again for the opportunity to present today. We look forward to your question and exploring how we can work together to support workers and employers. Just so you know, Minnesota Retain is holding a summit in 2 weeks. More detail will be posted in the chat. You are welcome to register and attend. It's going to be at the Mall of America, Radisson Blue Hotel. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Meg. Now it is my pleasure to introduce you to Becca Swisher. Becca, I'm going to let you say what your acronym means, but Becca enjoys wearing a variety of hats, including mental health therapist, domestic violence shelter therapist, alternative education teacher, early childhood family education teacher, U of M clinical supervisor, early childhood program administrator, business owner, training specialist, reflective consultation provider, and more. She intentionally brings her cross-sector work to the training she provides to organizations. Her training style has been described as reflective, practical, relatable, and engaging. She holds space for an emphasis on application of whatever new learning she brings to teams, with a target of sustainable practice and sustainable change. So, welcome, Becca.
Thank you, Les. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. I am so grateful to be back. I welcome anybody back who was with us last year, and grateful to see you again and bring you some new but similar information. And so just confirming you can see my slides. Is that I'm wondering, I can't see anybody. Everybody's got their camera off. So I guess let me know if you can't see my slides and we will figure it out. But yeah, welcome, welcome. Beautiful and thankful for that introduction. I have not not to overwhelm with how much variety I like in my work. I like a lot of variety. That is not how everybody's wired, and that is okay. That I'm married to someone who really appreciates going to one place to work and then coming home and having that predictability. I like a lot of variety. And so I bring you where my expertise comes from so that there's just context for you. My longest role has been as a teacher and school administrator. I've stepped away from part of that to be able to do more of this. But I've worked with parents, young kids, and then I do still teach at our local ALC Alternative Learning Center as well. And then a few years ago, I went back and got my therapy license. The little letters after my name mean that I'm a systems therapist, licensed marriage and family therapist, which means I see the world as interconnected and systems who need interaction in multiple parts to change, which benefits me as I think about organizations as well. I work as a reflected consultant as well to be able to keep people healthy in the work that they do, working with county-based child protection teams, licensing teams, working in different fields there as well. And then I grew up in a small business, so I have a heart for family-owned businesses and just the work, the passion that it takes to launch, to sustain your business, and have a couple of LLCs myself that are a small part of my world, but help me scratch that itch of like creative and entrepreneurship and those pieces. So, so I'm not an HR expert. I'm an emerging learner on so many things. And I always tell people, most of all, I'm a curious human. I brought some of the books and expertise that I'll pull from today are from the experts in the field. And so I love being able to translate what the research says, what the experts are saying into usable pieces for you and your organization. So a couple of things. I invite you to get a pencil and paper handy. I'm going to give you a couple of moments to just pause and to be able to write down some reflection. And then,
Becca?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No.
Your presentation is cut off. I'm
Oh,
wondering if you can make it smaller or something.
this slide is weird. It is like
Okay.
the word is cut off. It's a visual weird thing. Let me just
Okay.
switch to the next one, Lori, and see. Does this one look full?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, it's just a weird graphic design that someone else created and I was so lucky to find. So thank you so
Okay.
much. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thanks.
Yes, that's awesome. I appreciate it. So, and at the end, we're going to make sure that you have time. I think I've sat through a lot of PD, a lot of professional development. And to me, one of the trickiest parts is you get a lot of information and not time to land your plane before you go back into your busy lives and busy work. So at the very end, I'm hoping to save a little bit of time for us to do breakouts rooms so that you can just do a little processing together with other folks that are on the call. Like was mentioned, this is recorded. I'm happy to share the slides with Lori or Leslie, and they can push this out to you. So know that this is a resource that's available to you, all of these things. At the end of my presentation, I create a slide that curates all the resources that I'm pulling all of this information from. So if you are a learning geek like me, at the end, I've got the list of all the podcasts, all the books, the different accounts that I follow that inform my view on all of this. So Okay, so reminder, this is being recorded. I invite you to be as transparent as you feel comfortable being, but right now, in this moment, how would you describe your mental health at work? Just give me 1 or 2 words. And gosh, I do not know how to see. Okay, I think if I go here, I can see the chat. So give me just a word or 2. What is the status of your mental health? Okay.
Can you see
Yes.
them, Becca?
Yes, I figured out how to get
Okay.
that screen open. Thank you. Overwhelmed, scattered, drained, frazzled, overwhelmed. Okay, we've got some themes emerging here. Good, frazzled, tired, stable, beautiful, drained, overwhelmed. Rushed. Ooh, that's a good one. Tired and overwhelmed. Empowered, survival, blesh. I love it. Simple. Tired and accomplished. Oh, that's an interesting balance. I like that. I like that. So, okay. Confused, scattered, steady. Boy, we have some good balance in the chat here. We can definitely be helping each other. So steady. Okay, thank you for putting those in. I think just important to check in and think about. I'm going to start by literally defining mental health because boy, that's a buzzword right now. It is so important. And I think it's a blend of supporting mental health, providing accountability. So we're going to get into all that. So we're going to define it, talk about it, what it looks like to measure it. I think that's a part that's missing from our work often too, is how do you truly get a pulse on mental health in your work environment? What does that look like? And then systems change. So looking at what can shift within a system to create more opportunity for stable mental health for all workers. And then what does that look like as a leader? If you are a leader within your organization, what does that look like on your behaviors and your choices? And then putting it all together, put it into action. Again, we're going to give you time and space to do that. So I just want to name that sometimes I think we feel confused about mental wellness, mental health, mental illness, and what do those all mean? What is it really? And why do some of us might kind of cringe at the like, oh gosh, we got to make sure we're aware and supporting this piece. And I think that cringe comes from lack of clarity and lack of understanding of what things really are. So mental health, when it is a cringe for people to hear the term, not saying that that is how everyone identifies that, but knowing that in our world, there is a piece of that. And I think it comes from, it can be viewed as a crutch for avoidance of growth. It can be used as a tag out, too much, gotta back out, instead of a lean in, let's grow, let's support. It can be used as a way to protect people from growth instead of supporting them through it. It's hard work to support people through growth. And it can feel like it dismisses accountability when there is kind of that tag out moment. And so I want us to work through what it truly looks like to support mental wellness, mental health in the workplace. I love this World Health definition. Mental health is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. And so just thinking about that, it doesn't talk specifically about accommodations, even though we know those are important. It talks more about the state and what a person is able to contribute, what they're able to feel when their mental health is feeling balanced. Mental health isn't about feeling good. It's about your capacity to face what life brings and go through it. When we avoid struggle altogether, we can kind of shrink down. When we lean in with support, we expand. Raquel Hopkins has some really interesting emerging work. I do not agree with all of it, but it has caused me to rethink some of the pieces around mental health and how we think about growing and meeting new challenges. I work with kids a lot in the therapeutic setting. And so I think of this often as parents, as caregivers, we have a deep-seated wiring to protect our kids from struggle. And it is up to us to override that so that our child learns to cope with life not always being easy. This doesn't mean that there's anything abusive going on. It doesn't mean that kids are not being provided essential supports. It means that if we swoop in and we save our kids, and the same I would say for our employees and coworkers, if we swoop in and save, we unintentionally give the message, you can't handle this. And what we want to be able to do is give the message of, you can handle this and I'm here to help. Here's what support can look like in our organization. And to also know the difference of, you need a break. Let's figure out what this looks like for you. Or this job needs reallocated right now. Let's figure out what this looks like for you. Are there times where something needs totally taken off someone's plate? Absolutely. I had a bizarre thing. This was a couple of years ago. I had a vehicle. I was going from site to site between different workplaces. And there was a flash flood. It was in St. Cloud, and my vehicle drowned. I had a non-working vehicle. So I was in crisis. I was supposed to see a client. I needed help. I needed somebody to take that off my plate so I could figure out what was going on with my car. And so in that case, I was able to engage a system of support, call our front desk admin and say, can you let my clients know, please? So there is a time and a place for getting something off of your plate and being able to just navigate those day-to-day and exceptional things as well. I think about this kind of reframe, this idea of, we want you to feel better, we want you to feel okay. Again, can feel like you can't handle this, we're going to take this all off your plate, versus we want you to grow through this. And thinking about two different ways. Here's what support can look like. Or if the person has the ability to articulate it, what do you need support to look like? So those both need applied differently. Sometimes people are too overwhelmed in the moment. They can't come up with a fresh, like, oh boy, well, I really need somebody to organize this for me. I don't know which piece to do first. Sometimes they don't have the capacity for that yet. They need us to give them choices. Do you need me to do this or this? And so I think about how that one piece, giving choices of what support can look like, can feel so helpful to our staff. And I love that this is, sponsored and provided with Retain, because I think about literally that piece of it, retaining good workers. I realize it's a different angle than Meg was talking about, but that idea of how do we keep people and help them keep growing, because we know there's a huge cost to replacing and getting that lost time, that lost productivity in there too. We want to give our team the message, you are capable of more than you realize. Huge. So how do you measure this? I think this is one of the tricky parts that doesn't get talked about very much. And so I'm just going to toss out a couple of different kind of thermometers or things that you can think about within your organization. And so if you think about a simple question like, are you being, you could ask staff this, are you being challenged in a way that feels like growth or a way that feels overwhelming? Growth challenge feels very energizing for us, right? Overwhelm is like, Jim Gaffigan, who's a comedian, he talks about overwhelm being like, you're swimming and you're holding a baby, and then somebody hands you another baby and another baby. To be a parent of multiple kids can feel like you're drowning all the time. People usually know the difference of, I'm challenged to grow, or I feel completely overwhelmed and I'm not able to take on anymore. And then there's a third problem that you might hear, and it's, I'm not challenged enough. And so that's where somebody isn't feeling like their expertise is being used, or that their capacity is being used to its fullest. So kind of three things to watch for there. There is another way to measure, and it's, does your environment welcome, I don't know, let me find out. I find this often in teams. I work with teams as a reflective consultant, and often there's this unspoken expectation that they're supposed to know it all within this complex system and having to adhere to these different rules. I don't know, let me find out. Is that an okay thing to say within an organization? And staff members will tell me, because I'm coming in as an outside consultant, whether it is or not. And so I think of this vulnerability that this takes. We're going to talk about that a little bit too. Is it okay to make a mistake and reflect and have accountability and grow and learn? Is it okay to ask for help? If your organization is structured and has this capacity, you're going to hear these phrases. You're going to see people reaching out to each other for help. You're going to hear this awareness of, I need help here. I know how to ask for it. I know that it's okay. Um, if you don't ever hear these things, it's time to kind of look at what is creating that vibe in your community, in your organization culture, that you're not hearing those things, because people should be allowed to be learners to some extent. Again, accountability is good. People need to keep growing in many cases. So when you can say, I don't know, that's when the learning can really unfold and begin. So are people asking for help or are they heroically trying to solve everything alone? People who never ask for help either have enormous capacity, right? Very rare, or they're really burning out. They've gone into this like protection mode of like, I'm not going to show you what I'm working on because I think you think I should do it all by myself, or I don't feel safe asking for help. So when you hear things like, I need some backup on this, I need some help, when you hear things like willingness to bring in more team members when they feel blocked, or peer collaboration requests, that's healthy. That's healthy for people to ask for help before they're in crisis. So do you see people drawing? Do they know that they can? Have you made that clear? And then this one is always so interesting, I think, especially for entrepreneurs, nonprofits, etc. Can you make decisions under uncertainty? Can you make decisions with 80% of the information versus waiting for 100? When you have a courageous leader, they are able to get the essentials in place, get something launched, and then reflect and adjust, right? Whenever we're making changes, I think to hold in our head, it's really going to be rare that we have all of the elements figured out. But what are essential pieces? We need to get this figured out. And then what is our system for checking in? How are we reviewing the changes or the new things that we've launched to make sure we keep growing towards that goal of having a healthy, balanced system? We get sometimes that perfectionism really leads to paralysis, right? If we feel like we have to have 100% of things figured out. So looking for, what does that decision timeline look like? As a leader, how do you model that we need these essentials? We're not going to have all this other stuff figured out, and we're going to launch anyway. I use the term good enough a lot within my work, within my own parenting. There's an ideal, and then there's the practical, like, this is good enough. Let's get this out in the world. Let's get this launched. Let's figure out how this could help support, grow our organization. I hear a lot about burnout right now, right? This is, I think, a lot through COVID and how much our world was changing all the time. And it has stopped and it hasn't stopped. Our world keeps changing with AI and new procedures. There's always, new rules depending on what your organization is, the field that you're in. But I like this definition. Burnout is not exhaustion. Exhaustion is a symptom. Burnout is the depersonalization of work when you stop caring, because caring hasn't changed anything. There can be emotional exhaustion. There can be a cynicism that, kind of poisons. It really can poison your organization. Like, well, nothing's going to change anyway. There can be a detachment, and there can be just reduced everything. Everything has a reduction of productivity, etc. Often I have people ask, leaders ask, but my staff tells me they're okay. They're fine. Everything's going fine. And so as we saw in the chat, like, life is full and life is tricky. And so as a leader perspective, I think about, how do you support an employee that's burning out but won't admit it to you, right? And I think about, don't diagnose, but ask, invite, talk about what you've noticed. I've noticed you're 15 minutes late to work every day. I'm just curious to learn more of your experience of that. What would support look like from me? And so opening the conversation with the idea of gathering information before you create the system of accountability that might be needed is so important. You're going to learn so much more about your team, how they're wired. They're going to feel more safety when they're asked. They're going to get to make the decision of how much to share with you. But I love that. I've noticed, I wonder, gosh, I've got an amazing slide of Brene Brown's prompts that I'll show you in a little bit. That's just so helpful. I think as leaders, sometimes we don't know the words to say. We might want to open these conversations, but we're not quite sure. We don't need to be a therapist, right? But we can be supportive and we can allow for growth. James Clear is one of my favorites. He wrote Atomic Habits. And so his quote here is, "You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems." So we might have aspirational goals that are going on for our organization, but if our systems do not support working towards that goal, we're going to come back down to coming into the same habits and the same patterns again. If we do not build in opportunities to collect feedback, to reflect, to have accountability, we're never going to change our system, and we're going to end up with burned out employees again and again and again. So Simon Sinek is, just a guru in the leadership world. And so I wanted to just expose you. You maybe have read his books, you've maybe seen some of his other things. But I want to just talk a little bit about what it looks like to practice empathy, because it happens in small moments. It happens in Dr. Dan Siegel, who wrote The Whole Brain Child. He is my mindsight is a big word for him. It is existing in the mind and the thoughts of others. And so thinking about, how do we show people that they matter to us? They don't need to be our besties. In fact, they probably shouldn't be if you're the leader and they are your team. But how do you show them they matter to you? Because when people feel valued and safe to grow and make mistakes, your whole culture is going to be just beautiful. So let's watch this, and somebody interrupt me if the sound is not coming through. I think I click the right buttons, but sometimes I mess up on that. So I welcome the chance to grow. Just interrupt me if you can't hear it.
So why is it that when somebody has performance problems at work, why is it that our instinct is to say, you're out? We do not practice empathy. What does empathy look like? Here's the lack of empathy. This is normal in our business world. You walk into someone's office, someone walks into our office and says, your numbers have been down for the third quarter in a row. You have to pick up your numbers, otherwise I can't guarantee what the future will look like. How inspired do you think that person is to come to work the next day? Here's what empathy looks like. You walk into someone's office, someone walks into your office and says, your numbers are down for the third quarter in a row. Are you okay? I'm worried about you. What's going on? We all have performance issues. Maybe someone's kid is sick. Maybe they're having problems in their marriage. Maybe one of their parents is dying. We don't know what's going on in their lives. And of course it will affect performance at work. Empathy is being concerned about the human being, not just their output.
Okay, sometimes that feels tricky as a leader to balance this supporting our staff, our team through tricky things, and to still hold accountability for things getting done, right? But it is amazing to think about if you can develop some sort of affection, connection to your team, find something that you can kind of ground your perception of that person in. And if we can hold in mind that person is doing the best they can given the circumstances, if it's not up to the level we need it to be, we've provided support, then we fall on our corrective plans, right? Our ways that we allow people to see that they might be a great fit for another organization. I think about how our systems are often built from reactivity, right? They're built for firefighting. Somebody burns out, we give them that EAP referral really quick. Someone quits, we give that exit interview, what could we have done better? And then we don't often really put it into practice. We don't make systemic changes based on that information. Or someone has a crisis and we go, oh, mental health day. So these pieces are all important, right? These are great pieces for a healthy system to be promoting EAP, what's available, to be promoting the idea of you have a mental health day. Let's look at how you can invest that time. Let's look at what that can look like for you. Exit interviews, also very important. These are all very important things. They shouldn't be the only way that you're collecting feedback from your system on supporting your workers' mental health. And so mental health days are, again, wonderful, but don't expect them to fix everything. If you have a mental health day in a toxic system, it's like an ice cube in a burning building. That person is going and having a break and coming back to a toxic system. And so we need to fix the system. We need to fix the communication. We need to fix the boundaries, all of those pieces. Meditation, wonderful, huge proponent of meditation. It doesn't fix lack of clarity within roles. Yoga doesn't fix broken accountability. Individual coping strategies can't compensate for systemic failures. And so we have to give attention to the system and able to create a workplace that is healthier for our team. So the real problem is that lack of clarity, the lack of the buy-in for the organization, and then again, reactive communication instead of proactive communication. How can I clarify on the front end so that it's truly less work and less anxiety for all of us? How can I bring people in to create a process or a system that is going to be more inclusive, more diverse, so that we've thought through more of the things that might go well or might be tricky? So I invite you to take just a second and just write down. And we're gonna dig in deeper on this idea of clarity. The quote that this whole thing is named after is "Clear is kind, unclear is unkind." And Brene Brown, it's from her work. Again, she's just a guru of leadership, vulnerable, creative, courageous leadership. So write down, if you would, one place, don't put in the chat, this is just for you, one place in my organization where lack of clarity is creating chronic frustration. I've been in workplaces and work roles where there was lack of clarity around when payroll was due and what the expectation was for me as the leader to get things submitted. And I ended up not knowing who to ask. And so I felt unsettled for so much of that. So think about, again, one place in your organization where lack of clarity is creating chronic frustration. It often has to do with roles. Who is in charge of what? And do the different members of your team know that they're in charge of that? Do they know what done looks like? Do they know what the expectation is? So again, you've got this. I'm going to read it one more time just to give you a second to process. One place in your organization where lack of clarity is creating chronic frustration. Cool. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. So let's talk a little bit about systems change and what that can look like. Again, my hope is to equip you and empower you with ways to create more clarity so that the mental wellness in your organization is as good as it can be, right? We know humans deal with mental illness. They deal with untreated mental illness sometimes. That is its own piece, right? If we have good systems, they're going to help us clarify that piece of keeping people, that mental wellness, that mental health, stable in the workplace, and help us identify more if there's somebody who were wondering, is there a chronic untreated mental illness here that this person needs a higher level of support, that they need connections to resources? That usually comes out when we have systems of accountability and clear communication. We're able to identify that need and then connect that person with some help and support. So communication, compassion without clarity is chaos. we talk a lot about, being kind, being understanding, being empathetic, but there is this balance that we need to hold of, yes, seeing the whole person, having compassion, having empathy, and providing clarity, support. Those pieces need to coexist together. And so thinking again about your organization, and it's not enough just to be a fun boss or a great, leader that everybody's happy with all the time. Clarity requires some hard conversations sometimes and some work to get to kind of the nitty gritty of different things. So I hear leaders say, what if I'm clear and they still don't perform? So clarity, of course, it's necessary, but it's not the only thing. With clarity has to come accountability and follow through from our end as leaders. If that fails, it can be, again, a fit issue, not necessarily a clarity issue. So if you feel firm that you have made it very clear what the expectation is, you've provided built-in accountability, and things are still not feeling successful for the individual, then you might have a fit issue. That's a different kind of HR HR issue to navigate then. So what can this sound like? Again, I love giving people real usable examples. Feel free, again, you'll get the slides, feel free to write any of these down, but what has to be clear when we have expectations is, what does done look like? When this task is done, how will you know? What does complete look like? And deadlines, oh my gosh, we often feel we're being compassionate to people by saying, just get it to me whenever. Oh, as someone who is a extensive procrastinator, that is the kiss of death. You need to give me a deadline or my brain will never put it to the front of the pile and get it done. I work with kiddos who are on 504s and IEPs for ADHD. And this is often an accommodation that's given to them in the school setting, is extended time to get things done. Nope, there's different ways we can word that. That often is not a helpful accommodation for kids with ADHD, because their brain is wired to take care of the urgent, to do, there's other ways to do with that. So again, deadlines are kind. It doesn't mean you can't provide accommodation. It doesn't mean you can't decide if you have good reason to adjust a deadline, but deadlines are kind. The clarity of that is kind. Consequences, being clear on the, like, if this doesn't happen, here's what happened next. Because people live in this anxiety and uncertainty, can lead to depression when they create in their own mind the story of what's going to happen if they don't get XYZ done. And then help seeking. Oh my gosh, model how to ask for help before you're drowning. If you get to this point and you don't know what to do next, come find me again. If you forget any of these pieces, come find me again. Go ask that teammate. I think about, we do this as therapists, especially when I work with teenagers who maybe are having some dark thoughts. We practice in office calling the different helplines. It's so overwhelming to ask for help once you're drowning, once your brain has gone to this very dark place. To have done it ahead of time when you're regulated, so much more likely that it's going to happen later on. I'm sure there's some amazing studies around that. But here's how you ask for help before you're drowning. Model it, use it, revisit it often. Okay, love this wording and phrasing from Brene. She uses the word rumble language. And so one of my businesses is a partnership, which we were deeply advised not to do. And we front end loaded it with a lot of hard conversations, and we love it. We work well together. It's amazing. I'm super grateful for my business partner. And we adopted this language whenever there's something that we kind of disagree with. And so it labels the conversation that there's an invitation to disagree. And so let's rumble about this. Let's talk. Some people hate that term. That's fine. Find your own term, but find some way to identify it's okay for us to not see eye to eye. We'll get there. Let's get everything out on the table and then we'll sort it and organize it. And so Brene uses, we're going to watch a video on this because this one is so helpful. The story I make up. So again, just put a pin in that. We'll come back to that. She uses words like, I'm curious about, or tell me more, or that's not my experience, or I'm wondering, help me understand. Can you walk me through that? I love using that one as a leader. That one's super helpful. Walk me through what this looks like for you. What's your passion around this? Or tell me why this isn't working for you. Tell me what's not fitting. I think so much of the time we develop our own assumptions about how something's playing out. If we can ask questions and be curious with someone, it's usually going to save us so much time because we've gotten everything out on the table to be able to figure out what the next steps can look like. So that idea of I'm wondering, I'm curious about, can you tell me about your experience with this? Can you tell me more? Help me understand. Those take time to get woven into your language. But if you start using one of them, two of them, you will learn quickly. They are well worth it. And so I invite you to pick, maybe write one down that you go, I am going to try this one. And some of you might already be very well versed. This might be a native language to you. But if it's new, these are great ways to open up a conversation around whatever is tricky and whatever is causing some mental health concerns, perhaps, to be able to understand what the person needs. Again, this is connected with accountability. We're not just allowing people to do whatever, whenever. It's about us learning more so that we can provide support to grow and accountability for our system. So Brene says, she talks about the story I'm making up. In absence of data, we story. So this is a good example. A leader walks past without saying hello, and your brain goes, oh, she's really mad at me. She's really ticked off. She never liked me. I'm probably in trouble. I feel like we all turn into this like middle schooler that got called to the principal's office where we go, and so there's this piece of the story that we're telling ourselves. And so when we are able to dial down on it, we might find out, oh, the boss's daughter was up all night with a fever. And so can flesh that out by asking something like, hey, the story I'm making up is that you're frustrated with my report. Is that accurate? That invites that opening to have that dialogue around, are we right on? Usually not. Or where, to allow the person to know what we're feeling and then to allow that opportunity for clarity within your relationship with them. And so this is a 3-minute clip of Oprah talking with Brene about this. And so I'll let her explain it more. But gosh, I love this tool.
So you say that this is probably one of your most personal books yet?
Yeah.
How is this the most personal?
Well, I see the progression of like the gifts of imperfection is be you. Daring greatly is be all in. And rising strong is fall, learn, get up, and do it again. And so it's the most personal book because as I was writing it, really the heart of this book is about these really dangerous stories we make up when we're in the midst of struggle, when we're in a fall. We are neurobiologically hardwired to make sense of that fall, to make sense of our hurt as fast as we can. And if we can come up with a story that makes sense of it, our brain chemically rewards us for that story, whether it's accurate or not. And so for me, what became very important is to write a book to help people understand when you fall, the stories you make up about your fall need to be really tested. And so as I was writing it, what I realized was that my stories of failure and heartbreak were the ones that gave me the most access to understanding what was happening behind the scenes in the story. Because we all do it. We all do it. I mean, if you and I finish this interview and we walk down the hill,
Yeah.
and I say, thanks a lot, over, I really appreciate it, and you go like this, my brain takes that as anxiety or fear, and I immediately make up a story. I knew she never liked me. That Super Soul Sunday really sucked. I didn't do the right thing. It was terrible. And then all of a sudden, I'm working off a whole narrative. How I treat you the next time I see you is off that narrative.
Wow.
And then, it just keeps going and going.
So how do we make sure that, or know that the story that we're telling ourselves is in alignment with what actually did happen? Yeah,
That's the Rising
question.
Strong process.
That's the Rising Strong process.
Right.
Yes.
So if we use that example of just you and I together. And so there's 3 pieces: the reckoning, the rumble, and the revolution. The reckoning has 2 seemingly easy, but pretty difficult pieces. The first thing I have to do is, when you look at me like that and I feel something in response to it, I have to acknowledge, woo, a button's been pushed. I've been hooked on something. Emotionally is happening here. I'm responding. And then I have to be willing to get curious about what it is. So instead of immediately going to my crazy story, I have to go to, okay, I'm emotionally hooked around something. I don't know what just happened, but I'm feeling like stressed out about it, or it hurt my feelings or something, and I need to figure out more. I mean, and
the reckoning is actually the recognition of it.
Reckoning. Something emotional has happened.
Yeah.
But the big piece of the reckoning, and this is the part that really shocked me, is I'm willing to get curious and look into it.
Yeah.
Do you know how many people are not curious about emotion because that was just drilled out of us growing up?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, so much more there. Just really enjoy her work with that. So, yeah, it loves feeling and seeing it broken down, because when we're able to tune in, our body is giving us, I'm going to jump into my therapy hat for a second, but our body is giving us signals all the time of whether something feels safe or unsafe. And so when we're able to tune into that, it allows us the opportunity, we have to take the opportunity, if we feel safe and brave enough to do it, to address it in the moment so that it doesn't linger in our system, so that we're not having that story of like, oh my gosh, Oprah hates me, I did a bad job, versus going like, oh, I'm noticing this about myself. Can I bounce this off of you? And so thinking just about how to use that language, use those opportunities to, again, model. We have to model as leaders what we expect our team to be able to do. So let's talk a little bit about boundaries. Boundaries is, again, it's kind of a buzzword. It has maybe not a great connotation for you, maybe an amazing connotation. Boundaries aren't, again, the way that I think about them, it's not a crutch to like tap out, but it's an opportunity to clarify for the worker, for the system, for the leader, what does it look like to give fully when you're working and be able to know your capacity and to put boundaries around the time that you're working and you're not working. So boundaries is clarity. If you can't ask for what you need, you'll be resentful when you don't get it. Right? I think a lot of times we might think about what we'd like boundaries to look like, and we're not quite sure how to articulate what it looks like. Boundary is not a wall, it's a door. You need to know when it's open. And so the leader's job is to model asking what you need. I need 24 hours to respond to non-urgent emails is a boundary, not a failure. And so your world's expectations, what you need to have for clarity and communication within your organization, what boundaries are welcomed, what boundaries are encouraged. How do you support people in not getting to that exhaustion, burnout place, but to be able to have healthy things? Again, I think back to being a leader during COVID. This was very hard. It was very hard. Our worlds were changing daily, sometimes multiple times a day, especially in the school system. The rules of our operations were changing so often. It was hard to catch up. So in that case, making sure we have moments where we're able to take a 5-minute bathroom break instead of a 1-minute bathroom break, a walk out to our car to pick something up that we, stretch the legs. Being able to create little micro moments of taking care of yourself is a beautiful boundary to set as well. So Nedra, I have a video from her as well. She's just amazing. She wrote the book, Set Boundaries, Find Peace. And so she gives some, again, language. I think in Minnesota, we often grow up with this Minnesota nice, I can't possibly inconvenience someone by letting them know this is not going to be easy for me to do, or I can't possibly let someone down, that my own plate is too full. I can't add something else. Sometimes we need to borrow some language so that we know how to set an expectation or a boundary without feeling aggressive, right? I think we get assertive and aggressive mixed up. And so figuring out what does it look like for us to be assertive without having to feel aggressive. Rarely do we need to be aggressive with boundaries. Often we need to be assertive. And so just thinking about, what this looks like and how to back these things up. I love her, just the first one I'll read, and then you can read the rest and you'll get the rest. But I'm honored that you would ask me to help, but I'm unable to add anything else to my workload. So super gentle, kind, and leaves the expectation. I can't help with that part right now. There's too much on my workload. So she has tons of great examples of ways to phrase these things that are wonderful. I'm going to give us just a couple of minutes of her wisdom here. She's being interviewed. And she just goes through a few little snippets. Again, I want you to just kind of get familiar with this language, because as a leader, it's important. And as a team member, it's important to have awareness of how to do this if and when you need to do it.
Hi, I'm Nedra Glover Tawwab, a licensed therapist and author of Set Boundaries, Find Peace, and Drama Free.
One of the things that I found most interesting was just this idea that a lot of us feel guilty about setting boundaries because we think that there's somehow something rude about that. But there's plenty of ways to do it, to set a boundary in a way that is totally not rude at all and is in fact a healthy thing to do.
Absolutely. I think that the guilt is something we're taught as a way to get us to conform, right? Like guilt is a powerful teaching tool for kids. It's like, if you don't do that, this, if you make this person mad, then this. But people aren't teaching us how not to feel guilty, how to use our voice. I think it's very interesting how we want kids to be assertive, but we don't teach them assertiveness skills with us. They have to be able to be assertive with you too. They have to be boundaried with you as well in order for them to use it with other people.
One of the things that I've thought about a lot as I think about this idea of boundaries is how when I was working in an elementary school, you see so clearly how if you set a line, for some kids, that's totally enough. Just to hear it from you, great, they understand the line. But then there is always a subset of the class who they're going to test that boundary. You can't just say it. You have to enforce it. They want to see, like, what does that line look like in practice?
Yeah, it's a verbal thing that we do. We say to people what we want, what we need, what we expect, what our rule is for ourselves or the environment, the classroom, or whatever that is. And we also can behave as if we have a boundary. The behavior piece is sometimes the part that we struggle with the most, because we think once we've said it, that the other person will take our boundary and now implement it. And it's really up to us to enforce it through the behavior. So what I've seen is people may say, I've asked so-and-so not to call me, during my work hours, and they still call, but this person is answering the phone. It's like, well, your behavioral boundary is saying it's okay to call and you're actually not busy. And so if you're actually busy, that behavior would look like maybe enforcing your boundary by not answering, since you've already said you're not available.
At least for me, that is the harder part to do. When someone is, exactly in that situation, say, it's hard to be like, but they're emailing me or they're calling. It must be important. I have to do it. It's scary to actually enforce the boundary.
Each time that happens, when there's someone you're clearly setting a boundary with, don't do this thing, this is how I want you to do whatever. We look at them disrupting that boundary as, it must be a crisis. That's why they showed up unannounced. It must be a crisis. That's why they're calling right now. And then you talk to the person and they're like, hey, how are you? You're like, what? There's no crisis? You just came over here unannounced for no reason? It's like, yeah, they did. You know why? Because they don't really want to adhere to your boundary. They're showing you through their actions that they have a whole nother boundary. And it's not the one that you intended.
What are some of the practical things that you think people should just like right away start with when they're trying to draw boundaries with people in their lives or situations that are kind of difficult?
I would say pay attention to the things you complain most about. That person who stops by your desk for that super long chat, the person who doesn't seem to be listening as you're talking because they're distracted by their phone. So step one is to react a little faster, because sometimes with boundaries, we'll let things go on for years. And then when we finally set the boundary, the person is so offended because you've allowed them to do this thing forever. And now it seems like you're making this swift change when in actuality, you've been upset for 7 years. They just didn't know it. Also, your boundaries can shift over time, right? Like your boundary at this point in life may not be your boundary in 2 years. So don't get so focused on, I must have this boundary forever. It is a thing you can transition. And, certain people don't need certain boundaries. So there are some people who naturally understand some things. So don't think you have to have these hard conversations with everyone. Just feel the relationship out sometimes to see who needs certain boundaries. And those things don't have to apply to all people. And lastly, don't think about boundaries as something you need to do in this big conversation. It can really happen in the moment. It can be really swift. It could be, even lighthearted sometimes. I've certainly, set boundaries in a very joking way, but it was serious. And I might even say like, no, hey, I'm serious. Call me before you come next time. And it's possible sometimes to keep it light. So be mindful of your tone, be mindful of the place you're setting the boundary, the surroundings, but certainly have a little fun with it sometimes. It's not always you have to have this really hard conversation as much as you need to say something to another person.
Oh, yes, that little playfulness. It can just help soften things sometimes. I think about boundaries too, and just this idea of the age of technology that we're living in, and utilize those systems when you are headed out on a vacation or a break or a long weekend. There is, for me, a huge mental shift that happens when I know that I have my email responder on. My phone is designed to bounce back a message, letting people know when I'm out, when I'm back, and when they can expect to hear from me. It is, for me, just this beautiful load that's lifted mentally, where I know people know the plan. I know my clients, my therapy clients, they know the plan. I know that it gives me the permission to disconnect. And so totally acknowledge all of our industries are different. That's going to look a little different for each of us, but use those systems, model it, encourage it, teach people how to use it if they don't know how, because there's a beautiful gift of time you can give yourself that technology can help with. Okay, so these are a few, again, I have these at the end, but just to give you a little snapshot. If this is an area, I put a slide for this because this is a really common area that I get more questions on, is how do you set this if you've never had it modeled, if you've never really been made aware of how to do this in a way that can feel kind. It might feel uncomfortable at first if you're not used to setting a boundary, but you practice, you try, you review, you grow, you look for support. And these are some of the things that can support you as you're learning to do this, if this is a new world for you. So again, Nedra's book is amazing. She's got a workbook that goes with it. She's got a podcast if you're a podcast person. Brene does a great job. She's got a 2-part series called Living Big that supports this boundaries, integrity, and generosity. Some I can't remember what the BIG stands for something. And then Adam Grant has an interview with Nedra that's really good. So again, kind of summarizes. That's one of my favorite hacks when I see a book out by somebody who I really want to learn from and I might not have time to read the book, is to find the author interviewed on a podcast that's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, because they usually touch on all the essential elements without, I'm a massive reader, but there's so many books and there's never enough time. So take that hack if that's helpful to you. So again, I'm going to just invite you to reflect, just jot yourself down a couple of words or phrases, and invite you to just take a minute. And so thinking about you as a leader, as a team member, is there some place that you've been unclear? Have you made yourself more available than you want to be? One place you've been unclear, and it was maybe unkind. So we are all learners. We are all learning. We have new jobs sometimes, new organization, new cultures that we're working with in around. And so is there a place where you have been unclear and it was maybe a little unkind? It can be hard to reflect on things like this, but is there something where you can grow some clarity around? So again, invite you to reflect, just jot a little something down, some place that you've been unclear, and maybe it was unkind to the people that you work with. Okay, let's talk a little bit about leadership behavior, this idea of accountability. So I love the little quote here from Henry Evans. A culture of accountability makes a good organization great and a great organization unstoppable. Totally agree with this. I've worked in toxic workplaces. I've worked in amazing and healthy workplaces, and this is a huge part of it. And so I think often about, what does accountability look like? If I were to come to your organization and ask, what's your system of accountability? If somebody is not able to complete their work, or everybody is feeling on pins and needles because leadership is not very clear, what does that accountability look like within the system? I think often about some of the systems I've worked with. It's really unclear, if the leader is not healthy, who the team can talk to. And so I think about making sure that that is clear to people at any stage in the hierarchy of your organization. What does accountability look like? Who is that person accountable? Are they accountable to shareholders? Are they accountable to a board? Are they accountable to their executive team? There's a lot of different ways that you can provide this within your organization, but what does that accountability look like? I have an amazing example too that I think about. And this is something that comes to mind from last week. There was the impending storm, and I'm up in central Minnesota, and there was a local school district that decided, oh, we're going to do e-learning. And then the next day, we really didn't get much for snow or ice or anything like that. No other schools were closed or even 2 hours late. And so that leader made the call in the evening. And so that was an interesting moment where there's an invitation there, right? To either hide, to armor up, and, justify the decision you made. And this leader chose to put out an email to all staff, all community, stakeholders, families, and apologize, led with an apology. I want to apologize for making the call. The information we had didn't match reality. I acknowledge how difficult it was for people to scavenge childcare and these different pieces. And so it was simple. It wasn't highly emotional. This is where AI can help you a lot. Pull up Claude, write a draft or Pilot or whatever you use, and then ask it to decrease the emotionality of it. It'll help you do that, and then you can toss it in. So, but this leader was willing to be vulnerable, to take accountability, and to build trust. And so I was so impressed. I got a hold of that. I should just read it to you, but I give you the gist of it. And that will go so far in creating long-term trust within that organization, within that person's role with families and systems there. So sometimes leaders fall into an accountability trap. So we really hold others accountable, but we give ourselves like, oh, that deadline, I don't really need to do that, which can end up causing a lot of anxiety for those around us. And so accountability really has to start with the person that has the most power. And if you are the leader of the organization, that's you. You need to hold yourself accountable to figure out, what does that look like for you? What kind of support do you need to hold yourself accountable? One for me is deadlines. Give me a deadline. When do you need that by? What does it mean to be human as a leader? So thinking about, again, vulnerability, and I think there's a lot of confusion about this one too. People don't know, we need to be strong. We need to project that we've got it together. And being or showing any vulnerability can feel like too much. And so I'm going to give you a couple of really good visuals on this. But what does it mean to be human as a leader? Vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up when you can't control the outcome. And so thinking about how somebody might share their personal experience, their uncertainties, their emotions, they're able to invite genuine connection then and trust. And so let's listen to Brene talk about this idea of not oversharing, because sometimes people swing the pendulum too far and they're disclosing things that actually aren't helpful. They don't help how you're viewed as a leader. They're not productive and helpful in creating that workplace culture. And so, brief video from Brene, and then I have a couple slides that, again, kind of outline for us a filter of how to think about what to share to create, again, that mental balance, mental wellness, mental health piece for the whole team.
In order for transformation to happen, in order for there to be success by any metric, money, stock price, market share, whatever your metric is, you can't get there without brave leaders and courageous cultures.
You can teach courage.
Oh, you can absolutely teach courage. 4 skill sets. Number 1 being vulnerability.
I bet you that not too many years ago, if you had corporate leaders talking about their vulnerability and discussing shame in the office place, they'd have been laughed out of the office.
Yeah, I think that's still the case in some places. It's just, if you're at the top of a Fortune 500 company and your success metric depends on creativity and innovation, and you've set up a culture where vulnerability is seen as weakness, don't expect great results.
Don't expect the creativity.
No, because innovation by definition is idea, iteration, failure, iteration, failure, iteration. Places where they're doing the most remarkable kind of high risk, high reward innovating, huge tolerances for vulnerability. And so if you have leaders who are either preaching a gospel of vulnerability as weakness or modeling that, just don't expect great things.
You have said that vulnerability without boundaries is not vulnerability.
Mm-mm.
What do you mean by that? I'm not sure I understand.
When I go work with organizations, sometimes I'll hear someone say something like, how often should I cry in front of my team? And I'm like, oh my God, that's not what I'm saying. Vulnerability is not about, self-disclosure. I know leaders who never cry, who are very vulnerable and transparent. And I know leaders who cry all the time who are just BSers. If there's, vulnerability is great. Faux vulnerability or fake vulnerability, because vulnerability seems to be a thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
That pisses people off.
So you're not advocating for people to just put it all out there?
No, all I'm saying about vulnerability is that when you are in uncertainty, when you feel at risk, when you feel exposed, don't tap out. Stay brave, stay uncomfortable, stay in the cringy moment, lean into the hard conversation, and keep leading. Stay brave. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you need to overshare. I'm not saying you need to disclose. I'm not saying you need to weep uncontrollably to show how human you are. I'm saying try to be aware of your armor. And when you feel vulnerable, try not to transform up. Try to stay human, keep leaning. Very different things.
Ooh, so interesting. Totally makes me think of Iron Man or somebody who's suiting up with all of that. Like if you feel that coming, see if you can move back to curiosity, right? And so I love this, how vulnerable is too vulnerable. Love that she's talking about people can sniff out a BSer from a mile away, usually, right? If someone is not genuine, it is very evident. And so having something move you so much that you've got a tear going down your face, that something feels passionate and authentic, that's one thing. But creating emotion when you don't have any is a slippery slope. So how vulnerable is too vulnerable? If sharing doesn't help solve a problem or build connection, keep it private. Your trauma isn't team building. And so I love this little guide, this balance between openness and discretion, because I think it just outlines it really, really lovely. So when we think of high discretion but low disclosure, we're really protecting ourselves usually. So it can feel like things are calculated, manipulative. When we use high discretion on what we share and we have high disclosure, it can feel very collaborative. It can feel very relatable. Like I'm inviting you into my world. Let's figure this out together. When we have high discretion or high disclosure and low discretion, it can really be destructive when there's not that filter going, why am I sharing this? What's the purpose of this? And then when we have low discretion and low disclosure, we usually appear as checked out, not caring, detached with that. So again, just thinking about sharing, what you're sharing, why you're sharing it, and what will it help? What will it support? If it helps build that relationship, openness, trust, that's worth considering sharing. When we think about, as a leader especially, what is okay to share and what is going to cause distrust within an organization, things that you might want to think about saying or phrasing would be, I made a mistake. Here's what I learned. So you're inviting that vulnerability and you're showing that you're not comfortable staying in the uninformed part with the unequipped part. You're learning how to do it differently. Great modeling, beautiful language. Sometimes it's very appropriate to say, I'm struggling with this decision. I need help thinking this out. Help me make sure I'm considering all the parts. Again, inviting diverse voices into your conversations, so important and going to end up with a much more thought out, robust solution often. Sometimes we feel comfortable asking for help with a very specific task, a very specific thing. I love Karen Lynch's, she's a CBS CEO, share whatever directly helps solve a problem or connect with someone. Sometimes it's a person-to-person connection, right? Don't share, I'm a complete failure and I don't know what I'm doing, right? That doesn't necessarily instill confidence in you, in the organization. So it is a weird balance, being vulnerable and not causing anxiety within the organization. And so that, again, don't share, I'm struggling with everything. Pick one thing that feels supportive to share, connective to share. Don't share, I need help with my entire existence. If you're feeling that, let's find you a really good therapist. Let's find you a good system of support. And so again, figuring out what does self-disclosure look like that is helpful and productive and builds safety within your team versus self-disclosure that feels selfish, traumatic, disconnected, and mistrustful. A lot of role confusion comes from one thing, unwritten expectations. And so I think about this exercise. I think it's so interesting to think through as I have provided, supervision oversight to different groups. Write down everything, pick a role in your world. Write down everything you assume your direct report knows. And now then go to them. So do that first and then go to them and ask, what do they really know? Maybe you want to pick one process. Here's what I think this person knows about this process. Then go and interview them or have them write down, what do you know about this process? And then the gap between what you think they should know and what they know becomes your action item. It becomes your opportunity to clarify expectations, procedures, etc. And I hear a lot about this too. How do I provide extra support without enabling? And so, again, that idea that I want my team to feel confident, empowered, equipped. And so, extra support can look like temporary accommodation. Enabling looks like permanent lowering of standards. Extra support can look like clear timeline, checkpoints. Enabling says, I can't, this person, I'm not even going to follow up with them, forget it, whatever. Extra support can look like, what do you need to succeed? And enabling can look like, well, just do your best. There's no clarity around what's gonna happen there. So again, think about what are those things. There are times where we need extra support, temporary accommodation. There are beautiful organizations designed to support some of those pieces as well. So boundaries, I think about as a leader, how to equip people to hold boundaries really top down, right? How do you model your availability, your rate of response? There's little pieces that teach our team what the expectation is, written or unwritten. Stop rewarding people who say yes to everything and burned out. Oh gosh, this is so hard because we need those people that are giving and supportive and capable, and we want to keep things sustainable for them. So I want to, again, just invite you to reflect for a minute of what the story is that you're telling yourself about your biggest current challenge and boundaries. Or think about, am I using my phone or checking emails and meetings, potentially signaling it's acceptable to be distracted? How do I actively encourage my team to disconnect? So just thinking one of those pieces. I think it's so interesting to me. I get to go do trainings in a lot of different organizations, and sometimes I come in the room, people have paid me to be there and provide this, certain specialized training, and they'll have the computers up and they're not taking notes about our content and information. And so it's very interesting. What is the cultural expectation within organizations when they come? So again, invite you to reflect. What is the story I'm telling myself about my biggest current challenge with boundaries? Am I using my phone or checking emails and meetings, potentially signaling it's acceptable to be distracted? Or how do I actively encourage my team to disconnect on the evenings and the weekends, depending on your world that you work within? So when we want to live in the proactive world, right? Reactive is stressful. It's stressful for us. It's stressful for our team. And so thinking about where is this proactive part? So how do we build a system that prevents crisis? How do we look at maybe changing an exit interview to a stay interview? How are things going for you? What support do you need? Again, reiterating that here's how you ask for support, clarifying roles, and then I love pre-mortem before launch instead of blame after failure when you're launching a new product or system. So help me think through what's going to go wrong with this? What could go wrong with this? And then how can we work backwards to solve as much of it as we can? Remember, 80%. So, okay, I don't want to, I'm going to skip this for a second because I believe we're done at 10:30. I believe I did not protect enough time for breakout rooms. But I want to just end with this, and then I'll give you the slide with all the pieces that I pulled this information from. I really encourage you to pick one of these pieces to implement, to act on. And so your Monday morning action, I will give you a deadline by 5 p.m. Monday evening. I want you to identify one unclear role in your organization and write a 1-paragraph clarification. What does doing that work, what does done look like for that job? What does that process look like done for that job? Try using the story I'm making up in your next one-to-one meetings. If there's something you're observing that you can hold some curiosity around with your team, ask your team. You don't have to imagine. You can just ask, what's one thing that's unclear right now? And then just listen. Listen to understand. Don't listen to respond. Listen to understand. It's better to do less than you hope than nothing at all. No 0 days, says James Clear. And my gosh, this is so interesting. His quote that I have here too. Bamboo can barely be seen for the first 5 years as it builds extensive root systems underground before exploding 90 feet into the air within 6 weeks. I think so much about it takes time to create systems that lead to better mental health outcomes for our team. It takes work. It takes accountability, reflection, revisiting, and it can feel like it's taking a long time. It can feel like you've had to kind of clarify who is built for the work that you do. Is there anybody who's built for a different work and you need to help them with that? And then when you have things clarified, it can feel like things explode overnight in a good way, in a growth way. Okay, so here are many of the resources. Again, I'm a huge nerd. I'm super curious. I love a good podcast. I drive a few days a week for work, and then the books as well. I am somebody who likes to have my view challenged and grow. I love Benjamin Hardy, Dr. Benjamin Hardy. He has a quote that's, I want to always be a little bit embarrassed of who I was and what I believed a year ago. As in, I want my views to keep evolving and growing as we learn more about brain and neuroscience and relationships. I want to keep bringing in these different diverse voices and research into my work. So I cannot thank you enough for your time and just the invitation to come back. If it's ever helpful to get a hold of me, here's my contact info. My primary work is with the Ellison Center, which is a nonprofit mental health clinic in St. Cloud and Little Falls. But that is where you can find me. And again, I'll share these slides with whoever wants them, Leslie, Lori, and we'll get them out. But you tell me, Leslie, Lori, question and answer?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Are we wanting to keep recording this part?
We could, I don't know if Lori, you could end the recording.
Yes, I think.
You know, a weighted place of flight.
So we created a little time and space as we work here. So no